Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. So let me check my sound. Big shout out to Tim Canova for coming on to the show. Yesterday, I'm bad at doing two things at once. I've always been bad at doing two things at once. When I do something, I can invest a shitload of energy into it. That's in astrology, that Mars conjunct Jupiter dynamic in the Medicae, in the work section of the chart. The annoyance to family members and friends. But yes. But bad at doing two things at once. Extremely bad at doing two things at once. So 12:10 on a Friday, and events are taking place from a larger context around the world. Geopolitical consequences. Let's say there's a battle going on in the UN between the United States, France, UK, and Russia. Those countries, without any evidence, just assertions, are pointing the finger at Syria for a chemical weapons strike. Doesn't matter that it doesn't make sense. Doesn't matter that it is extraordinarily illogical. And their theory of events, they have nothing backing it. I mean, nothing at all. What we do know is they've wanted to change that government. They wanted to take Assad out of his seat for years. Assad hasn't gone anywhere, and he's backed up by the Russian government, meaning his government is solid. Duma, this place that they're talking about, has been liberated. Whether you want to call it liberated or demolished, whatever you want to call it, at this point, Russian forces or military is going into Duma, meaning the terrorists have been, for the most part, taken. They've lost. Call it what it is. The terrorists have lost. What you would consider to be the rebels have lost. Now, at this point, it's like, this seems like a big to-do at this point, seeing as the terrorists have lost. I guess I'm saying this in a weird way. What I'm trying to get across is, the argument is that the Syrian government did something that it didn't need to do. Why would it have done that? There's no reason for it to do that. It would only allow a pretext for allow Western powers to come into the process. No one in their right mind would do that. And you may want to believe that Assad is a maniac, but you only believe that because it allows that argument to take true, meaning the illogical argument to persist. Nevertheless, there are rational actors. They're rational political actors. In this country, you had Tulsi Gabbard getting James Mathis and confronting him about what you're doing is illegal. What Trump did prior was illegal. Now, Mathis was being wishy-washy. Well, we have a range of options and blah, 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 blah. If you had a range of options, why the hell did you fire those missiles last time? Those missiles were illegal. She even started in this thing of your justification, your constitutional justification for being over there is even illegal. All of this is shaky at best. Explain what you're talking about doing in that country. Explain your legal rationale for doing it. Explain how this benefits America in any way. Explain. She was awesome. She was absolutely awesome. But you have rational actors in the UK also asking questions. I've said this over and over again. If the left is going to have to be able to be strong within itself and hold this shape through wins where these guys are moving closer to the right. And Jeremy Corbyn has done that. Tulsi Gabbard has done that. She's done that magnificently and beautifully. Jeremy Corbyn is also. His own party has jeered him. His own party has bashed him. And he's remained Jeremy Corbyn. And he's still remained rational, asking questions like, why on earth? It's like, where's the investigation for this? Before jumping to the conclusion that Russia poisoned a spy, let's look for an investigation. That's rational. You should have an investigation before you prohibit your country in hostile dealings with another nuclear power. That's rational and sane as can be. In this case, we need to have an investigation. We need to get we need independent bodies looking at what is taking place and allow them to do their work before coming to a decision on what we need to do. That is rational. He's called for the UN and stop blocking each other, meaning Russia and the United States. Stop having a pissing contest. Allow the process to go through. Allow the international inspectors to go through and do their findings. That's rational. Somebody says something is taking place in the world. Okay, somebody says something is taking place in the world. Now, What does the international community do with that? Shouldn't the international community figure out if something has actually taken place in the world? And if so, what is the gravity of that thing that has taken place before deciding on the meaning of what that is? The story doesn't make sense. And so the story should be investigated thoroughly. And it should be done so by independent actors, not people who are affiliated with the United States and the UK, not people who are affiliated with Russia, but independent actors, independent investigators. That's sane. It's rational. And it's what Jeremy Corbyn is calling for. Let's take a look at this. All of these people are rushing the war. All of these people are rushing for people to fight. And by the way, one more thing. He's demanding to be brought in, or at the very least that Theresa May, the cabinet, does not make this decision alone or whether or not it wants to strike. Meaning, don't pull this thing of, we've made the decision to just go in and strike this other country with the United States and France. And he's like, well, wait a minute. No. There are questions about this. You haven't even had an investigation yet. Other people need to be brought in if you're going to have the conversation on whether or not to make this strike. That's exactly what he should be doing, is loyal opposition in Britain. So he's holding his shit. Let's take a look at the story. This is The Guardian. Corbyn demands Privy Council briefing prior to the UK military action in Syria. Labour leader says decision to join attack against the regime should not be made by cabinet alone. I don't like the propaganda in that. It's not a regime, it's a government. Call it what it is. It's no more regime as Britain is a regime or America is a regime. How many people, just to make that point home, what is the popularity of Congress in the United States? What is the popularity of the president? The popularity of Congress is so low. I mean, you have something like, 9%? You would have people who like toe fungus more than they like Congress. That's not hyperbolic in an odd way. I don't know the numbers, but it's close. It's like people prefer lice over Congress. It's some ridiculous number or some ridiculous comparison like that. Where's the legitimacy in that? Is it fair to say that these guys are a regime, seeing as the American public don't believe that they represent their interests? Would that be fair to say? If you were in another country and you were looking at this country and you saw that only like 10% of the American population approve of Congress, what would you regard that as? You have a Congress that's working that is not in the benefit or not representing the interests of that public. Regime sounds about right. I don't like throwing that word around because it's the way they use to make it seem like you're not toppling and destroying a government and murdering people in that country. You're toppling a regime. It makes it sound different. Call it what it is. You're toppling a government and murdering a bunch of people in doing so. I don't like that propaganda, but otherwise, I like Jeremy Corbyn. Jeremy Corbyn has demanded a private briefing on the government's intelligence about the Duma chemical strike weapons attack, saying more bombing, more killing, more war would not save life in Syria. Yes! Somebody say it. More bombing, more killing, more war will not save life in Syria. I just wish you would have said more murdering. More murdering. That's me being more harsh on this, but I'll take it. Repeating his declaration that Parliament must be consulted before military action is taken, the Labour leader urged Theresa May to learn the lessons from the Chilcot report showing the failures in the lead up to the Iraq war. Yes! Yes! Say it! Explain the similarities in this in the way in which they're cherry-picking evidence. What happened in Iraq? What are they doing now? Use the failures of Iraq to explain, or at the very least get across to the public, they're doing it again. Don't let them. They're doing it again. They're doing it again. Welcome to the revolution, Jeremy Corbyn. I know you're in a different country, but fuck it. Welcome to the political revolution. This is a political war. They are trying to literally have a war, and there are forces in this country and that country that are pushing back against this narrative. We're diminutive comparison, yes, but it's bubbling up. It's bubbling up. Tulsi Gabbard on one hand, Jeremy Corbyn on the other. As the cabinet ministers gathered for an emergency meeting on Downing Street on Thursday, he said, surely the lessons of Iraq, the lessons that came from the Chilcot report, are there to be proper process of consultation. Cabinet on its own should not be making this decision. You're taking this country into another war. The cabinet shouldn't be the sole people making this choice, seeing as failures in the last cabinet, or failures in the previous decision for war. The Guardian understands that Corbyn has requested a Privy Council briefing from the government. In 2013, the then Labour leader Ed Miliband was giving sight of intelligence before the Commons' vote to action on Syria, which then Prime Minister David Cameron lost. Corbyn said he wanted to see the whole picture, but also wanted to see peace in the region, which he said would require restraint by Western countries in Syria. Now, if you remember, in 2013, they tried to strike. Congress told Obama no, and they told him, Parliament said Cameron no. Cameron turns around and says, I understand what Parliament is saying, and he sat the fuck down, and there was no strike in Syria. Parliament needs to be consulted if you're going to do it. That's his point. That's a damn good point. If those people in Parliament are supposed to be representatives of the population of Britain, then doesn't it behoove Theresa May to put this to the people of Britain on whether or not they want to get themselves engaged in something like this? I think that answer is yes. And I agree with Corbyn. Let's keep going. It's a little bit more. Corbyn said he wanted to see I want to see an end to the war in Syria. That does mean America and Russia holding back, pulling back and talking to each other, Corbyn said. The dangers of bombing now, which could escalate the conflict beyond belief. Just imagine the scenario if an American missile shoots down a Russian plane or vice versa. Where do we go from there? Fucking yes, man. I have to be honest. I understand that I'm probably not going to get anything from YouTube today. I accept that part. This matters more. There's a benefit, though, in reading stuff that you've been saying. Like, I've been on this channel saying these... I've said over and over again, what happens if an American jet, or if a Russian jet is shot down by an American missile? What does that mean? What happens? I was saying that for Hillary Clinton era, but it seems like that same thing comes up in Donald Trump's era also. I love the fact that Corbyn is repeating this. No, I don't think he's watched my videos, but I love the fact that this narrative, what we're saying, is bubbling up into a mainstream way of people asking the same questions of, wait a minute. You guys are talking about a conflict. We have questions. I love that. That's awesome. That is absolutely awesome. I'm putting this article at the bottom. Here's another part. His Shadow Development Secretary, Kate Azamor, struck a different tone, however, telling the House magazine that Bashar al-Assad should be removed if he is found to have used chemical weapons on civilians. The person needs to be removed. I mean, an intervention must take place if evidence come back that the prime minister or the president or whoever the leader is gassing his own people. Get them out, she said. But I suppose what we've seen, it's not as easy as that. And I think that's where Jeremy's position comes from. They always seem to abscond, end up in another country. This world is messed up. It's not easy, but if a leader is killing its own, then it needs to be removed. We don't keep them there. They need to go. They need to be removed. Well, is that true for Israel? I mean, they're murdering Palestinians, openly shooting Palestinians. Is that true for Israel? I'm making the case that you're being selective in the way that you're looking about these events. And Jeremy Corbyn's point here is, A, we don't know if they did it. You haven't had an investigation. And B, even if they did do it, is it really necessary for military action? But the first point, though, you need to prove the first point. You haven't even done that before we even get to that second point of action to take. Where's your investigation? Where's your actual evidence? Independent investigation saying so. Start there. We can have the argument about the second point later. Start there. That's his point. Where's your evidence? If I want to see peace in that region of the world, putting a lot of forces in that and bombing the shit out of it is not the way to do it. And to her point is fundamentally ridiculous. If somebody's gassing their own people, we need to do something about it. Meaning we need to send a lot of bombs and missiles and murder a lot of people in order to get them out that seat. That makes no sense. That makes no sense. The position that you're taking makes no sense. In order to prevent bloodshed, we need to cause a shitload more bloodshed. How did that work out for you in Libya? How about Iraq? It seems that you guys cause horrors and always forget the horrors immediately after causing those horrors, allowing you to create more horrors around the world. It is a good thing that you have somebody who's rational, like Jeremy Corbyn, who's saying, maybe we need to rethink our policy in the way we go about the world. And before we do anything, and before we make any decisions or judgments, we need to have evidence of that. Meaning we need to have an actual investigation. And we think Russia needs to grow up, and America needs to grow up and allow the investigation to take place. I would make the case that Russia, in this case, is elated to have the investigation in this. Because they probably know that it's bogus. They know that the story that Western media is pushing on this is bogus. And Western media is probably going to be less likely to want an actual investigation because they also understand that their story is bogus. We'll see. Russia says they have irrefutable evidence. At some point, they'll release it. And at this point, America and Western powers have none. So, they don't have anything to release. The chemical weapons place is going out, apparently, currently today, or in short, to do an investigation. We await their results. Fact is, though, in 2013, the last investigation showed it was the rebels, most likely, not the Assad government. And when Assad has already hemmed up like more than 90% of his territory, when they've just released that particular area, there will be no reason. There will be no reason. So, I will put this at the bottom. Jeremy Corbyn holding his shape in the face of withering ridiculousness. So, this one, again, wasn't meant to be long, short, simple, to the point. You guys have a good one. I'll see you in the next.